Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Emily Spranger. I'm an academic trainer in the Center for Teaching and Learning. And super grateful to be here today with one of our own NCU alumni. We have Dr. Gustavo Miranda joining us. He is the 2021 recipient of our Achieving Your Dreams Scholarship. And we're just really excited that he's here to share a little bit of his experience. I won't dive too much into the details here. I'm going to turn it over to him shortly. A couple of housekeeping things. Please make sure to have conversation in the chat. We want this to be interactive. So any conversation you'd like to have in the chat is welcome. The only thing I would say is if you want everyone to see your comments, please make sure you utilize the drop-down option in the chat and select everyone. Otherwise, it's just going to go straight to the host and the panelists here. And our webinar is recorded. As always, we will post this in the CTL LibGuides webinar page for future reference. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to post those questions in the Q&A function of your Zoom. We will get to those throughout the presentation if time permits, and definitely I know there's some time at the end for our questions and answer section. So thanks so much for popping in the chat where you're joining us from. It's nice to see people from all over joining us today. And without any further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Miranda.
All right, thank you very much, Emily. Yeah, so glad to be here. Let me go ahead and share my screen before I begin talking and introduce myself. So let's go ahead and get that going real quick. Perfect. All right, here we go. So thank you everyone for joining with me today in NCU's CTL presentation here. My name is Dr. Gustavo Miranda. I'm an NCU School of Business alumni. So in my presentation, one thing leads to another, as the name suggests in the title. I just kind of want to share my experience as a student with NCU, and then what has, my experience been after NCU. So I'd like to share those thoughts, and at the end, I'll be happy to answer some questions. I'll open it up to you all if you have any, and if you have any burning questions throughout the presentation, please do not hesitate to let Emily know and put them in the chat as well, and she'll inform me if there's any questions as well. So here we are. As you can see the picture right at the beginning there, that is me getting hooded at my graduation that I attended last year in 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee. So that was a very exciting time. The last time I attended a college graduation was actually when I was graduated from a community college in Tucson, Arizona. So it was good to see a good spread of everyone here in the presentation: Atlanta, Georgia, Jamaica, Chicago, Michigan, Ohio I saw, and I'm actually originally from Tucson, Arizona, born and raised. But right now, currently, I don't know if you can tell, I'm in a hotel room in beautiful Hawaii. So I'm actually here at a conference for work. So here we go with this presentation, right? All right. Next here. All right, so for my doctoral experience at Northcentral University, honestly, I had a great student experience. Everyone has different experiences, but mine was a great experience, maybe because of all the support that I received from all my faculty and advisors. They were very instrumental into what I did as a student and how they helped me to be pushed forward and to continue on with my education. Without them, I wouldn't have received all the guidance and the motivation I needed to continue with my courses and to be even successful within each individual courses as well. So if you're in your doctoral journey or you're barely starting out with NCU in your core courses, please reach out to your faculty and your advisors. They're very helpful in what they do, and they share all the resources that they can provide to you as a student, and don't be afraid to ask, and that was one of the things as I was in my university experiences as an undergrad, my master's, I was always afraid to ask and not knowing how to ask it. So once I got into my doctoral experience, the main thing that I told myself that I wanted to do was, go out there, ask questions, no matter what it is, and how you want to say it to them. Obviously, you want to express it in any way that you can, so that you can get that experience and that you can get that knowledge and that information that you need to continue forward. And then also the opportunities for scholarships, as I saw as a student, I never really received any scholarships during my undergrad or master's degree program. So this was a time of like, hey, doctoral students, we don't typically have scholarships available to us or financial aid available to us. So I was able to, reach out to my advisors. They looked into it for me. They were able to suggest a few scholarship websites, a few things that NCU provided as well. And as Emily shared earlier, I am the Achieving Your Dream scholarship recipient. I was awarded that scholarship, so I was very grateful for that opportunity to get some of that financial assistance and to just continue pursuing my education that way. I have joined student communities throughout my time through NCU, so the School of Business, the NCU community, just looking at the community board just to see what students have been experiencing, what questions they have. And a lot of them were a lot similar to me. So I was just very grateful to know that I was in that same experience with a lot of the other students. It wasn't just me feeling the same one that way. It was also other students feeling that way. So yeah, dive into those conversations and ask those questions to your fellow peers, because it really helps out, right? So like, you build that community within yourself. It's almost like as if you were in a brick and mortar school. So, if you want to join a community, you want to join in a student club or anything like that, it's kind of almost that same thing, but virtually, right? So we're online, we're doing this together. We share resources. It's a lot easier to share it online. So that, posting links, resources, articles, anything that can help you out as a student in your doctoral experience as well, no matter what part of school you are at. But also another thing is that when I did my doctoral experience, a lot of things that my chair mentioned to me once I got to the candidacy was, attending webinars. Even before then, the webinars really helped out in terms of wanting to know, okay, how are you as a student? Okay, well, how are you going to be a successful doctoral student? Just those types of things, just hearing someone's experience, what hesitations they have, what questions they have, their fears, their excitement, anything that you can get out of it and just share those things. It's just that building that community once again. And I really enjoyed that experience part of it in that process. And it just really helped me out and helped me to be motivated even more. And I think that's like, you'll hear me see that word a lot, motivation, because, it was during this doctoral experience, motivation was a big key for me, right? So, it's a lot of classes, so, it takes time. You got families, you got work, you got, other things, life happenings, and how do you balance all that out? So the motivation was really a big thing that certainly was a thing for me when I was as a student at NCU. The Academic Success Center, that really helped me out with my dissertation process and my courses, reading my papers, making sure I was on track, making sure, hey, did I get my APA formatting correct? Is this, what I'm supposed to be doing? How can I improve? What should I improve on? Because you're always going to get that positive feedback, right? Even if it was a little bit negative or anything like that, like, hey, you might be teetering off a little bit here. Let's get you back on track. And then, that's the support that I needed, right? I didn't need somebody to tell me like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it. No, like, hey, let's guide you back. All right, what were you thinking right here? Like, tell me what your process was. Tell me what you want to go with this. Do you think that this was supposed to be here, right? So it's putting the thinking back onto you and the learning experience back on you. But, then that helps you can make those connections for your future assignments or, like as you go into the doctoral experience, boom, you kind of know, hey, I've been in this situation before. Let me ask those questions again. Is it answering what I need to go to? And if not, then now you have that tool. And then you can still certainly obviously go back to the ASC, the Academic Success Center, and, ask someone like, hey, here I am again. I'm a little bit stuck. How can we do this again? Here's my questions, previous to last time. So now you have that question as to, how you want to ask that once you go to the Academic Success Center. And that really helped out a lot. I use them almost all the time for all my assignments and, major assignments, obviously, as well. Mainly because I want to make sure I got that feedback from a third party rather than my chair or my faculty, because they know me pretty well. But then also I want someone that doesn't know me well and reading my assignment and making sure like, all right, do I have someone else that's outside that can, give me that other feedback that's, not me or my faculty member. The library was very instrumental in everything as well. I use that basically every day, right? Looking up articles, research, just using the library for various tools so that I can be immersed in my studies and, just be, a researcher at that point, right? So and that's basically what we're all trying to be as a doctoral student is, we're going to be a scientist, right? A research scientist. And it really, really did help, all the databases you kind of figure out and know how to filter, how to navigate, what to find, how to do all the little nodes in there, using the keywords and things like that. And obviously, attending the Academic Success Center was one of the things that helped me attend that as well. And then a bunch of other webinars that the CTL presents and NCU provides to all the students, regardless of your school, at NCU as well. And like how I mentioned in the previous slide, communicate regularly with faculty and advisors. Whenever I had, luckily I didn't have to communicate too much with my advisor on a bunch of things, but when I did have that burning question, I was able to go to my advisor, email him or her, and then they would respond to me, within a really good time, day or two if they were out, or if someone was out, then someone else filled in and, helped me out with my question, which I was very appreciative about. And that really helped me get on track with things. So on the school side of part of it, advisors really helped me out. And then faculty, of course, on the academic side of it, everyone was just instrumental in that part of it. So that community support that I had in my journey was a big key thing. So I recommend, please stay in constant communication with your faculty and advisors. Even if it's just a simple question, ask them. They're really helpful if you're doing virtual calls, phone calls, or if it's just a simple email, any type of communication that you want to do with them. I highly recommend it. And, also as doctoral students and just students in general, we also just need that break, right? I talk about use all these resources, you got to keep that motivation going. Well, take breaks. There's a lot of times where I had to take a break and okay, I worked on this thing 4 days straight. I'm writing this paper, I'm stuck. I got that writer's block, or, I got that research block. I don't know where else to go from here. Take a minute, take a day, just to kind of relax a little bit, kind of reset yourself a little bit, take your mind off your studies, do something else, do your work, in your normal life, hang out with your family, friends, anything that you can do, just kind of distract yourself, and then come back to it. Because, it's surprising as to, if when you take a break, no matter what the time limit for you would be, for me, it was maybe just a few hours, might be a day. That motivation will kick right back in once you do that, right? So if you've been working on a computer all day, that one little simple quick 10-second stretch, boom, revitalizes you right then and there. So imagine, taking just a few hours or even a day of a break, a mental break from writing and researching and all that, can do wonders for you as well. So that's what I highly recommend at that for during my, from what I'm experiencing as a doctoral student. So just kind of, if you've already seen this, but just kind of reiterating a little bit of the phases of the dissertation that I went through, and there's a little recommendations of what I would like to share with you all that helped me. Obviously, it's going to be different for everyone. Maybe you're already doing some of these things, or maybe, hey, hopefully, maybe you get something out of it, right? So the phase one is the problem and the purpose statement and the research questions, which is your chapter ones. And what happened was during this time is that my problem statement was a bit too broad. I thought I was good. I thought I was succinct in my response, and it was, but it wasn't specific enough as to what type of problem I was having, and also what was my research question, right? And so that was some of the things that I had trouble with. So then I went to the Academic Success Center. I looked at the webinars, and I registered for one about problem and purpose statement. I highly recommend it. They were very helpful. They help you think through the process. They'll read your statement as is, and then they'll say, okay, so what are you planning to do? What are you looking at? How can we improve this? How could we make it more succinct and specific at the same time in terms of what your problem and purpose statement will be? So I recommend looking at those workshops on developing your problem and purpose statement. Those were really helpful because once I submitted on my own my problem and purpose statement, my faculty chair wrote back and said, yeah, this doesn't make sense. It's kind of broad. You might want to redo this, a little bit. So then I was like, okay. And then she recommended attending one of the workshops. So as soon as I was able to get that workshop going, because they fill up really quickly, so they're very popular. So that's another thing, little tidbit there that I can recommend. But once I attended it, all your other peers that are in that session, they're all in the same boat, different schools, doesn't matter what school you're from, they're there to help out. So they're really knowledgeable as to, they're not experts in the specific subject that you're in, but they want to know, okay, they ask you these questions like, oh, okay, well, here's how can we frame it. Here's what your problem is. Here's what your purpose statement will be. And then your research questions are going to be about this, right? This is because this is what you want to find out about. And it looks like Emily's giving me the cue that we have questions here. So go right ahead. Yes.
I do. I have a question actually about the problem purpose statement. In your experience, when you attended some of maybe the workshop on the problem or purpose statement, do you ever feel like when you started with this question that you had, that maybe it was a little bit too broad, do you ever feel like when they were asking you questions about what you want to do, what you're going to do you ever feel like you didn't have an answer to it?
That is correct. Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, because when they did ask me that question during that workshop, because I didn't really know how the workshop was going to go. So that was one thing. So then when they did ask the question, I had to think a minute, okay, well, what am I actually doing? And then, the recommendation that they did, and this was like really helpful. And this is why I recommend going to these workshops, because they're so helpful. And what they did was that they asked the question, okay, so what do you want to do? Right. So that was the question, like, oh, well, what do I want to do? What am I researching? Well, I want to research this, this, and this, right, on this topic. I'm like, okay. So then they put all your key words together. So it sounds like you're saying you want to research female executive leaders in higher education overcoming barriers. I was like, yes, that is actually something that I want to do, which is actually the title of my dissertation. So, so yeah, and I was like, yes, that is actually what I wanted to look at. So I was looking at barriers, female barriers in higher education, right? I mean, that could be a whole mess of things. What type of barriers are you talking about, right? Well, executive leadership, well, that's a key word, right? So only executive leaders, female. So that's, succinct, but, broad enough where it's female executive leaders in higher education. So it could be, a roundabout of a bunch of areas, in the United States, obviously. But I'm not saying I'm looking at only female executive leaders in this sector of higher education only, right? Or like these colleges only. So I'm not limiting myself, but also it's succinct enough where it's broad, but also specific at the same time, if that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. And I think that's really helpful as people take a look at their problem or their purpose statement, problem and purpose statement. Right. Because I feel like when people start asking questions about what it is that you want to research, I think it forces you to dive into those keyword terms as you're referring to them. So thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, no problem.
And I know before we move on, I know there was, and forgive me if you get to this, I know this is something that you mentioned on the previous slide, kind of taking breaks and finding your motivation. Is this tips and tricks for motivation? Is that something maybe you're covering later in the presentation?
No, I'm not actually. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, that's a good question. Yeah. So
what was something that maybe you used as like a tip or a trick for motivation? I realize it could be personal to you and everyone's going to be different, but what's a strategy that you used?
Right. Exactly. So, unfortunately we were in a pandemic when I was actually writing my dissertation. So I was kind of limited in terms of breaks and what I could do. Right. So, typically what I did is that if I would start out writing my dissertation, or maybe just doing the research part of it, because a lot of reading, trying to siphon out like, okay, this is going to fit, this might fit, this isn't going to fit, just doing all that part of it, that's a job in its own self, right? Just the research part of it, keywords, reading abstracts, this will work, not work, all that good stuff, right? But then, so, for taking breaks, what I did is typically, luckily there was a park right nearby me. So, I mean, if there's nothing nearby you, maybe just going for a walk, listen to music, that helps, just to kind of, at least help me, right? So if I'm feeling stressed, listen to music or singing, obviously not when nobody's around, because, I don't have the voice for that, but singing out loud for me would just help, get that stress out from me at least, right? Just kind of help revitalize myself. If maybe reading a book might be a different way of someone relieving stress, even though it's more reading, but at least you're doing something that you enjoy, right? So maybe it's watching TV, maybe it's doing some type of physical activity, exercising in some way. So those are some of the things that I took out of it during the pandemic. Obviously, I probably would have done a lot more,
Right.
but yes.
That's
And
a nice way to reset for sure. Thank
right,
you for
exactly.
sharing
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, no problem. So, obviously everybody's different in terms of, what they tend to do in terms of breaks. So whatever works for you, do that, and it doesn't matter if you want to keep doing that same thing over and over again, switch it up, whatever works for you. Watch
Absolutely.
Netflix for a little bit. Hey, who knows? Right.
Nice way to hit the reset button for sure. Thank
Right,
you so
exactly.
much. Thank you for that, Dr. Miranda, and sharing some of the ideas that you did for tricks for
Cool.
motivation or resetting. And then again, thank you for explaining a little bit more about your problem and purpose statement. So I'll stop there. There are a few more questions, but we'll come to them later.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah, no problem. And also just going back to that phase one with the problem and purpose statement and research questions. Actually, I'm actually at a conference right now in Hawaii, and I met with a group of fellow employees and colleagues where we wanted to network for those that were wanting to pursue a doctoral degree, or if they've already been part of it or graduated. So I was part of that group yesterday in our networking session. And one of the things that they did, obviously NCU is a little bit different in the institution that they were working at and going for their dissertation was different as well, is that they did their chapter 2 first, which is all the research and all the things that you want to go through. And then they did their problem and purpose statement afterward, because they kind of go hand in hand. Your problem and purpose statement kind of outlines what you're going to do for your chapter 2, for your literature review. And then chapter 2 is all literature review, right? So your research, everything that you've been working towards, everything that you want to, build from your problem purpose statement. So that could be a strategy that you can kind of start building a little bit. So if you're thinking of a specific topic, like for example, for me, female executive leaders and their barriers in higher education to move up to executive leadership, maybe I want to look at, higher ed, or what is, barriers in higher education for females, right? And start looking at the future research, what the problems were, how they did the research. And then also even maybe looking at, that was specific to higher ed, but also what about industry, maybe in the broad spectrum, right? Kind of get that base and kind of see like, okay, what's happening outside of higher ed? Is this working for a lot of people? Is this same problem happening outside of industry compared to higher ed, right? So that was something that was interesting to find out yesterday. So maybe this could be a thing for you as well. Maybe like a short strategy to kind of start thinking about while you're in your dissertation phase, or even before your dissertation phase, and you're starting to think about your topic and what you want to write about as well. So that was an interesting thing that came out, and I'm glad I was able to maybe share that with you all, and hopefully that works out for you too. Phase 2 is the research, like how I've been saying. You develop your theoretical and conceptual framework. Again, I can't stress enough. Attend those webinars, attend those workshops of building your framework. If you can attend, time wise and things like that, your chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, and 4, and your 5 workshops and webinars and things like that. I highly recommend them. They're really great at what they do. The Academic Success Center, they help you along the way to, even if it's just chapter by chapter in chunks, they'll take a look at it for you. They'll make recommendations and comments for you. And then they'll give you that positive feedback that you need, right? They'll give you that feedback that you need to, push forward, to improve your writing, to improve your chapter 1 and 2, just things like that really help out and kind of help you become that better researcher for yourself as well. So that, I'm able to, eventually you'll be able to be here and present at CTL or anywhere else that you would like to be as well with all this. Phase 3, the data collection for qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. So, in the IRB process, the Institutional Review Board. So that process was, made a whole lot more sense once I attended a data collection webinar as well. My research was qualitative. I initially thought I was going to do quantitative. One, mainly because I like math. I'm good with numbers. And qualitative was not my strong suit, but, my chair suggested I do qualitative. Even when I did my problem statement in that phase, they mentioned that I was probably going to do a qualitative. I was like, yeah, maybe. And then lo and behold, I did a qualitative, and you know what? I loved it. It was actually really good for me, and it helped me to see my gaps in my own education, my skills as a student and as a researcher as well. And then I was able to build upon those skills and then, share my experience and know what that process was. So it was really good for me. So if you're on the fence with quantitative or qualitative and you're like, you know what, this isn't my strong side, hey, it might be the best thing for you because, dive right into it, embrace it. That's what I recommend. You're a researcher. We're all researchers here, and it's going to be great, and you're gonna enjoy it. Believe me, it's going to be difficult, yes, and it's going to take some time and all that, but you'll enjoy it for sure. Phase 4 and the final write-up and conclusions is probably one of these were probably my favorite chapters, maybe because chapter 4 was my results. What did I get out of this research that I did once I did the IRB approval and I went and interviewed my participants, got the data back, siphoned out all the themes that I needed, and then even new things that also emerged out of it, which was very surprising as well. Things that I did that wasn't considered in the research. It kind of mentioned, but it wasn't part of my themes initially. But new themes came up during that time, and that was very surprising. So I was like, oh, yep, I got to include these in here because this is probably very important for someone else that may want to continue this type of research or this topic in the future, and then they can see what's going to happen. And then obviously number 5 is the conclusion, what you thought, future research recommendations, and how should someone else follow this template as well in terms of going to that process and continuing on that research problem. Important thing that I recommend, just follow that dissertation template. Make sure it's also the up-to-date template because it's really helpful. It really helped me to guide me in terms of what I needed, what should I include. I think there's also like page and word requirements. So please take a look at those so that you get those requirements in so that when you submit for your chapter 1 and chapter 2s to your dissertation team, you got all the requirements down. So then all they're looking for is the content. And if you got the content down from going to the webinars, Academic Success Center, you're well on your way. You're gonna be riding high compared to all the others that maybe did not take advantage of these resources. So I was very grateful for all that when I was doing that. So chapter 2, it's a long process. It's a long chapter. I was really worried about it because man, I had some problems in chapter 1. But once I did the Academic Success Center, attended the workshops, and I wrote my chapter 2, I was really nervous when I submitted it because I was like, man, if I got some corrections and feedback that I needed on chapter 1, chapter 2, it's gonna be a lot. And luckily, after all that hard work and everything, a few suggestions came back only, and it actually got approved right away on the first try. I was like, oh, thank God. So made those quick corrections, submitted it once more again, just to get that final cleanup on chapter 2, and then I was on my way to chapter 3. So it was a really good process. And then that's another key motivation there for me was, hey, I did it. Chapter 2 is done. Let's get the next one. Piece by piece, one by one, we're chugging along here. So, all right. So life after NCU. So here's a picture of me and my daughter. Yes, I am in my full regalia there. I was part of the Delta Mu Delta community as well. I don't know if anybody else is. Shout out to those if you are. But yes, that's me getting ready the day or two before I was heading off to in-person graduation in Nashville, Tennessee. Look at her, very excited for me. I think she was just more excited to take the picture rather than me graduating because she's only 5 years old. So she doesn't understand what graduation means yet. But yeah, so here's a picture of me and my staff. They are actually here with me in Hawaii as well for the conference, but there's my staff right there, my 2 coordinators. I'm a project director for a TRIO SSS STEM program. I don't know if anybody's known about it, but our program, what we do is that we assist first generation, low income, and students with disabilities, help them. In my particular institution, we're at a community college, so we help students get to college here, complete their associate's degree, and then transfer to a 4-year university, or once they complete their associates, move on into industry after that. So, I started during my doctoral journey, I was a program coordinator, and at the tail end of my dissertation phase, I actually became a project director. So I've only been a project director now for a couple of years. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I lead this great team here, the 2 folks next to me. there. I'm also a Phi Theta Kappa advisor, so I got recommended to do that. I'm a University of Arizona alumni and a mentor now, so I put myself in for that, and I'm hoping to do that for NCU as well pretty soon. Just looking at all my time commitments. But yeah, so after that, let me see here if I say more on the next one. Yep, here we go. So what was next for me? So I had multiple opportunities to present to my research to my colleagues at my institution and also outside my institution and professional conferences. And since my doctoral dissertation was about female executive leaders' barriers in higher education to move up into those positions, executive positions, I attended the Arizona Women in Higher Education Conference. So, it was just revitalizing to, express my research and share that results and what I did. And also, the good thing about that and the revitalizing part of it and motivation part of it as well is that, a lot of the women that were at that conference saw a male advocating for them going into executive leadership, so I got that comment a lot. And, I was, feminist here where, I wanted to be part of that group to advocate, right? So if I had to use that male privilege to, share that voice, then I will, right? For the greater cause of everything for that, in terms of my dissertation. Another thing is also, I don't know if anybody's heard about the Bellwether Award, but I also submitted my dissertation. I was a recipient, but I was not awarded the award for that one. But I did get to the next phase, but unfortunately, I didn't move forward after that. But it was a good learning experience, and I was able to be able to submit because I had just completed within the year my dissertation, so I was eligible to apply for that. But then now there are more opportunities for me to advance in the workplace as well. So now that you get those letters and that degree, that piece of paper that says you're a doctor, there's more opportunities to advance in the workplace. But also with my doctoral degree, which is in business administration, the reason why, and I'm working in higher ed, but I wanted a degree that I can use both in industry and in higher education. So in case any other opportunities came up, I can go either which way, right? So I can go into any industry that I wanted to go into. But yeah, so just to reiterate my dissertation topic here, a qualitative study of female executive leaders overcoming barriers in higher education. I really enjoyed my topic. I really enjoyed the research that I did. There were things where when I was reading research about like the barriers that the female executive leaders did mention in other research, and when I did my interviews as well, just listening to the stories was both heartbreaking and uplifting as well at the same time. Just hearing obviously the barriers were the heartbreaking part, but then the uplifting part was how they felt, how they managed that, and how they got out of that as well. So that was the uplifting part, and also made this doctoral journey a lot more sweeter as well. So just want to throw that little tidbit in there. So just in case you're wondering, how do you feel when you go through that process? You might feel differently, who knows? But yeah, that's how I felt when I was going through that as well. Well, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. So yes, I will take any questions now after that.
Absolutely. And while folks I do have a couple of questions in the Q&A and the chat, but feel free to pop any other questions in the Q&A at this time, or if you would like to raise your hand, you're welcome to do that as well. But just as a woman, I would like to say in Women's History Month, I'd like to just say thank you for being an advocate for women in executive leadership positions. I have lots of questions about how my personal questions, why you chose qualitative over quantitative, and we can maybe get to that if that's time, but I want to get to the attendees' questions first. And I know that you briefly touched on this in many different ways, but maybe you can expand on it a little bit more in your previous slide. But Negus has a great question about return on investment. How has your life changed, if any, once you attained your PhD? And it seemed like you gave several examples, but do you want to expand on it a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. Just trying to reflect back on a little bit. Obviously, you get the opportunities for advancement in the workplace. I almost kind of get the sense that, beforehand, before I got that, that doctor or those letters at the end of my name, particularly in the workplace and other people that work or that were colleagues of mine, kind of got a little bit more respect out of it, just because now I got the letters afterwards. So like, oh, you're a doctor now. Oh, hey, now I'm gonna, reach out to you for things, things like that. I don't know. That's just kind of how I felt, So like, it was like, you're just another colleague of ours, but oh, you're a doctor now. Okay, well now you're a big deal. Well, I mean, hopefully I was a big deal beforehand, but I think once they see that name and like, people start talking a little bit more like, oh yeah, you're pursuing a PhD. Oh, he's a doctor now. Like, so you kind of get those a little bit of those accolades here and there. And then also, for me, it's rewarding because now I get to share that experience with my students that I work with. They're like, oh my God, like you got a doctorate. Like, what was it in? Like, oh, like what'd you do? They don't, because students think as professionals, they're like, oh, well, it must have been easy for you. It wasn't. And some of those things, like you share that story and then that motivates them even more, which, kind of rewards me in that sense, why, why am I here? Why am I doing this for? Oh yeah, that's right. The students, because they want to hear our story, my story about this. And, it's just revitalizing and like, sharing that story when I was an undergrad. I was like, wow, I never knew you did that. I was like, yeah, I mean, you don't see it, until someone asks you or until you explain it to someone. And then same thing when I went through, my graduate school, all those things that I, had to do and things like that. But yeah, so, and then for other examples in terms of that, making more connections, like, oh, hey, like I'm in these little groups of, doctors now, the Delta Mu Delta, I'm in that network community. I get to get more of these resources now for myself, like networking or, hey, are you interested in pursuing, this a professional development? Are you looking to do, executive leadership in the future for yourself? So then now I get those opportunities to be a part of that now because, whether because I'm a doctor and like, I reach out to those resources and, and now obviously I have time to do it because I'm not a student no more. If that makes sense, it's because sometimes we don't get to do those things because, we're so busy, if you're school and work and, if you got, family, you got a life outside, of all those things, it's really hard to do, and sometimes we just don't think about that. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get to that. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. And then by the time you're done, you're like, oh man, I should have done that. But, then now you get that chance to do that and then kind of make up for lost time a little bit. But yeah, so, I mean, it's been a great experience. I don't know, hopefully that answers the question a little bit more, but,
It does.
It does. Okay.
It really does. I think it as Phil kind of popped here in the Q&A, it kind of sounds like the reward is also a value is added to your personal and your professional life.
Correct.
I like the idea of getting some time back as a person who's working full-time and a parent and pursuing my doctorate at the moment right now too. So I get that. And Mary Rose also said, hey, I like the part about taking a break because that's something I have a challenge doing. And I think a lot of us have a challenge doing that too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up in this conversation, Dr. Miranda.
Yeah, of course. It was a big thing because I did catch myself a few times now that I reflect back, and like even during that time, like you don't realize how much work you're putting in until you realize it's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, and you're like, oh, I have to go to sleep and wake up in 2 more hours to go to work. And then do this all over again, right?
Right.
One of the things that someone said in the webinar that I used to do at NCU was like, do a little bit of something every day. It doesn't have to be 4 hours of full on all this. Even if you took 2 hours this day doing this, 2 hours this day, 2 hours this day, or 2 hours break, 2 hours break. However you want to do it, but just do something, a little bit of something every day, right? It's one, you're just in that cycle and that repetition of like that muscle memory, like, oh,
Right.
you know what, I gotta do homework, like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do this for 2 hours, and then also just having a planner or a to-do list, like saying, okay, I'm gonna do this today for my class,
Right.
I'm gonna research a couple articles and then that's all I'm doing today, and
Right.
then tomorrow I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna really get on this and really do this part of it, right, and things like that. And then you want to make time for yourself and attend those birthday parties, hang out with friends, be with your, your significant others, your kids, or just time for yourself. Go
Right.
to a spa, get a massage, whatever it is that you want to do. I recommend a massage. It
Right.
really helps out. But yeah, just whatever helps you to be motivated and just relieve stress. Breaks are essential. That's for sure.
I think so too. Um let me see, a couple of questions. Thank you for
Yeah, no worries.
adding those bits as well too for our attendees. So
Mhm.
question in here, and I know everybody, as you've mentioned, everyone's doctoral journey is different, but did you by chance ever attend any of the dissertation boot camps?
Unfortunately, I did not, mainly
Okay.
because it was just time and money. And then also when I started my dissertation, well, yeah, one, it was also time and money, but also during the time when I was actually in my dissertation, it was COVID-19.
Oh, right.
But yeah,
Okay,
so I
yes.
couldn't go in person. I think they did have some virtual ones, but I think
Yeah,
primarily they were in person too. So
that makes a lot
but
of
I
sense.
unfortunately I did not. Yeah. So again, it was just the time and the money part of it that I wasn't able to go even before my dissertation process, because you can kind of get a
Go
head
whenever.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but I did look into it and I was really interested in it. It was just the money for me, unfortunately, where I
Okay.
couldn't attend. But I mean, if I had money to do that, I would have done it.
Okay. And
Yeah.
obviously the COVID bit, that does,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interested how you collected your surveys and all of that, but that's, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Phil has a question in here.
Sure.
If you did, when did you ever become comfortable with being Dr. Miranda? Was it
Oh,
right
wow.
away or?
I still am not, but
Ah,
I'm trying to get into it though. But I do have my colleagues. They do introduce me as Dr. Miranda, Dr. Gus. Students also ask me, how do you want to be, addressed? I'm like, well, you can call me Dr. Gus. How about that? I'm fine with Gus or Gustavo, however they want to say it. I'm not going to say like, oh no, it's Dr. Gus. But I am getting used to writing, Dr. Miranda on a lot of my forms and my at my work and all that. But yeah, so I mean, it takes a while to get used to. But yeah, eventually it'll be second nature at that point. At least for my professional documents for work and all that at my institution. But yeah.
absolutely. I
That's a
feel
good
like,
question. I was like, oh no.
I know, right? Yeah, you're like, actually, I still am not 100%
Right,
comfortable.
right. Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah.
I feel like I will be 100% comfortable after all the work I
Hey,
do.
yeah, you earned it. Yeah, if you're,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
don't follow
Um,
my steps. Do what you need to do.
and earlier you mentioned, let me see, a couple of questions here. Oh yes, so this is really about that work-life balance.
Oh,
And when I say work-life balance, I feel like I should add work-life balance slash dissertation journey in that, because
right.
Marianne mentions about a little bit about just a comment here, and we'll see if you want to expand a little bit. But
Okay.
in the past, she's mentioning her kids were burned out when she passed on going to the movies with them because there was a bunch of reading or an essay was due, or an essay was only half complete. So managing my time is something that she's working on. It's all about balance. Hearing about your experiences is something we can all identify with. And I really do appreciate some of your tips for like scheduling out, right? So
Right.
2 hours, 2 hour block, take a break, whatever that is. Do you feel like when you were in your dissertation phase, right? Because everyone's program is different, depending on what school you're a part of, but in your dissertation phase, when you were actually writing, did you have a schedule set out, or was it just kind of like whenever I can get it done? I mean, how did that work for you?
Right. Yeah. It was a mix of that, of whenever I could get it done, but also I did have that schedule also at the same time. So luckily, well, not luckily, but during COVID, I was home,
Oh,
so I had nowhere else to go. So that situation was just a little bit different, obviously. But before that, when I was just, before the dissertation phase, when I was, reading articles, so like I would go to work, and that was the thing that I did. During my lunch break, sometimes I would actually, maybe read an article or two, depending on how long they were. Maybe write up a paragraph or two for my assignments. That could even go with the dissertation process too. Maybe write down some thoughts, or maybe have like a little notebooks next to you. So like maybe if you're at work, if you're able to, like, oh, I should include this in my dissertation writing. Just write down that little note and say like, okay, remember this for later, right? For paragraph so and so, section so and so. Maybe that might help out as well. So what I did for my own, when I went to work, I would go to work an hour early because I had my own like little computer, and then I would work on schoolwork for an hour. So that dedicated, because nobody was there, so I got quiet time. So I went for an hour, did that. Once 8 o'clock hit, okay, I'm at work now. Lunch hit, if I was up for it, I do maybe a couple paragraphs, maybe read an article or two, right, depending how long they were and what they were about, and take notes from that. And then after that, boom, work again, and then until 5 o'clock, whatever time I got out. Okay, I'm gonna maybe eat something real quick, digress just a little bit, and just kind of get myself relaxed. Grab your cup of coffee, drink whatever you want to do, and then to start writing a little bit or start reading some more. And then also, if it helps, do a to-do list, or even on your phone, set like a little timer saying, okay, you know what, I'm gonna work on reading this article for maybe an hour. So hey Siri, set a timer for an hour, or whatever phone you got, if it's not Siri. Just saying those timers so that like, oh, like I had an hour, I didn't finish. Now I kind of know like, okay, this is it's going to take me a little bit longer. So maybe now next time you have an hour and a half, or maybe in terms of the timer, have that checklist of what to do in terms of your assignments, right? So luckily, in the D2L shell, when I had like my articles and things I had to do for the week, when I was doing like the core courses, that it would check off whenever I read a like an assignment or do something with it. So I was like, oh, accomplished, things like that. So the same thing would happen to me when I did my dissertation. I would write down my to-do list. Okay, I'm gonna read these articles. Okay, I'm gonna write a couple paragraphs today, and that's just today. Tomorrow I'm gonna do the next article and write 5 more paragraphs, maybe, right? Because I only have one article, and it's a shorter one, so then I'm gonna write more, right? So I should be able to hopefully get more done within that hour and a half, or whatever time you specify.
Absolutely. I like the idea of reminders on your phone.
Yes. Reminders were always helpful for me because, like, even if, like for me at work, I have my Google Calendar. So like, if I have an appointment, oh, it's there. It's going to remind me in 10 minutes, like, oh, I got to do this, things like that. So obviously these were my suggestions, but of course, like what works for you, right. To-do lists, timers on your phone, or, on your watch, anything that can help you, just stay focus on the task that you're going for. And like, if it's that hour and a half that you need just for yourself, do it. Unfortunately, there were times where I did have to work, like, because when I was going through my doctoral experience, my daughter was only maybe like 1 or 2 years old at the time. So then, she was, teeny tiny. So she was waking up every so often. So I put her down to sleep. Okay, I got a good couple hours before she's gonna wake up, feed, and then I put her back down to sleep again. Right. So that was my daughter was my timer at the time. So she got a little bit older and she slept through the night. Then I had to put my own timer. But then at that time, then that muscle memory kind of kicked in for me, because like, I was up late. Unfortunately, obviously not the recommended thing, but sometimes that's kind of what happened. And that might be the sacrifice that we all have to kind of make. We're already sacrificing ourselves, just going, through the process of going to doctoral stages and doctoral degree. So you're already making that big sacrifice already, and kudos to you all for doing that already. So, that's a big step, so then now, how are you going to want to persist and motivate yourself to, move forward from that? Obviously you're not the only one. Let me say that, to say that again, you're not the only one going through this. And there's a lot of people that are going through it. Hit up those community boards, see what they're doing. Maybe what I'm sharing may not work for you, but maybe someone else has some suggestions, and take those, and run with it, so, mine's not a one size fits all type of thing. So,
Absolutely. And I completely respect that you share that, because I think that people need to remember that
Yeah, of course. And
as
hopefully
well
that
too, as we're
helps
going through.
with that,
Ye-
with that question.
Yes, yes. Um, One more question here I have from in the chat, excuse me, as I look at it. Did you pull all of your research articles first and then focus on reading and writing them? Or did you take a staggered approach with pulling articles? Pull, read, pull, read.
All right. I'm guessing for the chapter 2 dissertation phase, I'm guessing most likely.
It doesn't say that, but that's
Okay.
my assumption.
Okay.
Yes!
Okay. Yes, it
Exclamation
is.
point.
All right. Yes. Okay. Yeah, good question. So what I did is that I kind of did a staggered, because what the suggestions that I got when I did the webinars was that, when you have your problem and your purpose statement ready to go, you kind of have like your topic in mind as to what you want to do and your focus. I would go into a database. So make sure you kind of, write it off in a sticky note somewhere, or like on your laptop or on a notebook, preferably, because you're gonna have a lot of that. Figure out, start with a database, Eric, ProQuest, business source, whatever you're using, education source complete. All those, write down in the database that you used, write down the keywords that you use, because maybe you might use those keywords, nothing popped up, but maybe another database has a bunch of articles that might pop up, or topics that pop up. So use those same keywords, keep track of them, use different combinations. So if I used female executive leaders higher ed, women executive leaders higher ed, like switch up the words a little bit, use your synonyms and antonyms, things like that, because you'll pull up a bunch of different results. And then also another thing is that I used reading the abstract, right? Okay, like siphoning out, like, oh, you know what, this might be a good topic. Okay, I'm gonna save that one. You know what, this one's definitely going into my research. This one, this has nothing to do with what I want to do. So like I kind of picked and choose and then chose about maybe 5 articles to pull at a time, and then the ones that fit within my research. Started reading those a little bit more, right? So kind of seeing like, okay, is this kind of like the topic that I'm going for? Is this the research that's kind of in line with mine? Writing notes as to what I'm going to include in the chapter 2 phase, because like, okay, this is going to fit in this theme. Oh, this part can fit in this theme, so you're going to pull several things from just that one article or that research that you pull out into different themes that you might have within your chapter 2. Right, in your theoretical framework, your conceptual framework, because that's another thing too. You want to see, are these articles using theoretical or conceptual? Because then that's going to be another thing that's going to ask you, are you using the theoretical or conceptual? And so the theoretical is more about like, is it more like just theory? Conceptual, are you applying it? And mine was a conceptual, so I was applying this one. So so those are different things like that, right? Obviously, you can still use theoretical and conceptual within your research, because that's maybe all there is, right? And so then you're kind of showing that process within your research as well. So hopefully that helps. So again, you don't want to do the burnout thing, but maybe like 5 at most. Obviously you don't have to do all 5 all in one day, because some of the articles are really long. But maybe pick and choose and or kind of read about the future research, because that's the thing that's going to look at is future research, the findings that are in there. Are they in line with what your research is going to be all about, right? Like for example, when I read articles like, yes, women had barriers in higher education, women had barriers in industry, and here were their barriers, mentoring, networking, their work-life balance, things like that were some of the things that I had in my research. So siphon through, do little by little, figure out your themes that you're going to come out with, and also your themes and your chapter 2 kind of go in line with what the research says. So even though you might have some themes in your mind, you got to have that evidence, right? So kind of think of yourself as almost like, you're a lawyer standing in front of a jury trying to prove to them there's barriers here, there's something going on here, let me show you, the research says, so and so says, and obviously it has to be within the past 5 years. There might be some that you go, beyond that, which is okay, because, there's that little link. And then also what I recommend as like a little tidbit, if you haven't been using it or haven't heard about it yet, within those articles, look at the references as well. because most likely they got their information from someone else within that same topic. So then boom, there's your references. So you're kind of webbing it out and, pulling all the nodes together and finding all your themes that way as well. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit more.
Absolutely. She said, thank you so much. Great insight. Thank you. And I love the term webbing it out. Like, I love that suggestion. If you find a resource that you like, look at the other resources, because chances are there's something applicable to you.
Right.
There was this question in the Q&A, which it says, I'm only in week 2 of school. I've started to think about my problem and purpose statement. Am I ahead of myself, or should I wait until I've completed the required courses? I'm going to share something. It's my understanding that it's never too soon to start thinking about what you'd like to do research in, but to remain flexible, right? Because as you go through your courses, you may find like, oh, wait, this is not the right way for me to go, but I'm still interested in this subject. Maybe I'll go this route with it. Could you kind of, I guess, expand on that? Is that your?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly what you just said. Because, throughout my courses, there were some classes and some assignments that had me think about, what would you want to do your dissertation on? What would be the problem and why, right? So I wrote my assignment, it wasn't like a complete, like, okay, research everything that you need to know about it. No, it was like more about like why I wanted to do it, why was I thinking about doing it, things like that. And then here and there, like little articles about it. But yeah, so it's never too early to start thinking about it, because at the end, again, you have to be succinct and broad at the same time, right? So,
Right.
at that same time. So, and also I changed my dissertation topic, I think 3 times. So I had like 3 different ideas and I didn't know which one I wanted to go to. And so eventually I put all my topics kind of together and made one. And then another thing is too, towards the end, when I was finishing my core course before my dissertation classes, one of my instructors, he was really good, by the way. And we had a phone conversation to do like a little check-in. And then he asked me like, oh yeah, have you thought about what you're going to do for your dissertation topic, for your next class once you start your candidacy? And I was like, well, I was thinking about doing this, female executive leaders in higher ed. It's like, oh, okay, well, have you found research on it? I was like, oh, not so much, but, that made me question like, oh, maybe I had this whole problem and purpose that I wanted to do, but is there research behind it? Like, am I now going to be able to do this? So it's never too early, because that's the question that they might ask you. Is there research behind it? Is there evidence that there's a problem with this? And things like that. So then even though you might have this topic, or you might have, several ideas in mind, look at the research and see what's out there. Is there a lot? Is there a little bit? Because then that'll help define what you want to do, right? And then kind of build your passion in that topic as well, to kind of see, all right, this is my specific topic, but it's in this area. So hopefully that helped out. Answer the question.
Absolutely. Yeah. Phil said great feedback, and thank you. And I'd like to thank our attendees for asking all of these questions and participating and engaging with us today. And thank you so much, Dr. Miranda, for coming back and presenting your journey and giving some tips and tricks along the way that helped you be successful, and also talking about your experience after the doctorate degree, right? Some things that have happened as a result of your experience for working so hard to earn what you earned.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to talk to you all about my experience, and hopefully share some things that you might take with you. I wish you well, and good luck with everything. Please feel free to reach out to me. I know I didn't share my information. I probably should have shared that. But go with Emily or to see if you want more information or have any other questions for me as well.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me or the CTL if you'd like to connect with Dr. Gus or Dr. Miranda, depending on. And we would be happy to connect you all. So thank you. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.